Alrighty, let's talk about the election of 1992. Now, the election of 1993 is going to be super rare in the fact that it's going to have three major contenders for the presidency. The United States of America being a system with two major political parties. Usually it's the Democrats and Republicans that really only have a chance of winning the presidency. In 1992, there's going to be a third candidate who comes in who really challenges both of those two and has a real chance of actually becoming president of the United States. The first one to talk about is the Republican candidate, George H.W. Bush. He is going to be the incumbent president at this time period. Second one we have is Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton is considered a New Democrat. I'll talk about what a New Democrat is in just a second, but he is a moderate governor of a southern state of Arkansas. Now, the Democratic Party had learned from the previous two presidential elections that when you nominate someone who is on the far left, it's going to be a lot harder for you to win the presidency. Dukakis got his butt whooped. Walter Mondale in 1984 also got his butt whooped. So they need someone who's a little bit more moderate, and that's kind of where they're going to turn to Bill Clinton right through there. And lastly, we have Ross Perot. Now, Ross Perot is a Texas oil billionaire, and he is going to run as an independent. He's going to really be a single issue candidate, but that's going to carry a lot of weight. It's an issue that a lot of Americans care about, and it's going to really influence his election in all reality. Now, this is going to be important because it's going to be a realignment of the electoral map. We're going to have the Northeast, which is really going to start going for the Democratic Party ever since the election of 1992. The industrial Midwest, case states like Michigan, Wisconsin, these kind of industrial Midwest states, they're going to shift in how they're going, and the West Coast. This is the beginning of the West Coast being real dominant for the Democratic Party. I believe it's every election since 1992. Oregon, Washington, and California all went for the Democratic Party. So there's a real realignment of the electoral map in 1992. Bush is going to have an incredibly high approval rating after the Gulf War, up into the mid-90s, which I believe was the highest approval rating any president has had since like Eisenhower, even up until current day with Trump. That is a very high approval rating. However, that's not the case anymore. After the Gulf War is over, Bush's approval rating really dips way low within about a year and a half. So he goes from having a approval rating of nearly 100%, which is unheard of, to being in real jeopardy of actually winning re-election again. Republicans are seen as war hawks at this time period, which is someone who is really strong and strong on defense, but weak on domestic issues. More concerned about war, making sure they're protecting individuals defensively, protecting the country, building up the military, than focusing on domestic issues. Now, the Cold War is going to be over at this time period. So people are a lot more interested in the domestic affairs of the country than they are on protecting the United States militarily. They don't see the need necessarily because there's no real threat going on. Bush is going to raise taxes as well, and this is going to hurt Bush a lot. During the election of 1988, he's going to make the promise, read my lips, no new taxes. He's going to have to break that promise in his presidency, and this is due to a recession that takes place. He realizes the only way to really stabilize the economy is to raise taxes. Now, this is going to anger his conservative base, which does not want him to raise taxes at all. A lot of conservatives, especially very far-right conservatives, do not think taxes should be raised at all. A lot of them are very opposed to taxes just in general. So Bush is going to raise taxes, and that's going to anger his conservative base. Additionally, he's going to be seen as a liar. Now, to a point, all politicians will make some statements that aren't going to be 100% truthful. I'm not calling all politicians a liar, but it's really hard sometimes to keep your promises and do exactly what you say when you get the situation, and the situation doesn't warrant that. So Bush did do something which he viewed as the best option for the country. However, he's going to be hit hard on this and seen as a liar. Now, the New Democrats are going to come in 1992. And they're going to be important for a number of reasons. Number one, the New Democrats believe in shrinking the size of the federal government. This isn't policy that a lot of conservatives have as well. They're going to believe that the federal government has become too large, and they need to shrink it down and return some of that power to the states. Again, this is a fairly conservative policy position, but the New Democrats are going to hold this. They're going to hold traditional Democratic views, but they're going to be more moderate with with this kind of thought process. Okay, they're not going to be like the Michael Dukakis coming in, the kind of seen as weak on crime, weak on this, weak on that. They're going to hold these traditional Democratic values that the Democratic Party has held really since Kennedy and Johnson in the 60s, all the way up to current, but they're going to be a lot more moderate. Now, this is going to lead to a realignment of the electoral map. States on the West Coast, okay, as I've already talked about, the Midwest, the Northeast, really shifting to be fully strong Democratic safe states. Now, many women are going to switch parties during this election as well, and this is going to be a result of these social issues. As a result of the election of 1992 and even up to current day in 2020, the majority of women in the United States do vote with the Democratic Party, and this is primarily due to these social issues. As a voting bloc, women tend to agree more with the Democratic Party's platform on social issues than they do the Republican Party platform. Now, that's not to say all women are Democrats and then that's not the case, okay? But just understand that as a group, women are going to switch parties to the Democratic Party at this time period. Bush is going to be having a number of issues as well, and this is going to lead to his really defeat in the election. The economy is not looking good. When the economy is struggling, that is a very bad sign for an incumbent president seeking re-election. There's going to be a split in the Republican Party. There's going to be a challenge by the more conservatives, like evangelical Pat Buchanan. Remember from 1980 when Bush first ran for president, he was seen as the more moderate to Reagan on the far right, and this is going to be happening again. The more conservatives are going to come out and challenge Bush. So there's going to be this kind of challenge within the Republican Party, and there's a new Democrat in Clinton. Okay, they can't run on the same kind of being a moderate because they're also running against a moderate. Okay, it's easier to run as a moderate when you're running against a more extremist individual. Bush can just say, hey, I'm a moderate. Clinton can also say I'm a moderate, and that whole argument really is going to fall. Now, Perot is going to play an incredibly large role in this election, and he is a one-issue candidate, as I've already talked about, and his issue is the debt. Okay, the United States, he believes, is leading itself to a self-destruction by building up the debt. Also, we got to talk about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is going to be supported by Bush and Clinton, arguing for free trade between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Now, Ross Perot is going to argue that this is going to make it easier to outsource jobs, where you take jobs and move them to a foreign country because you can pay the workers less. So he's going to be arguing American companies are going to start moving their businesses to Mexico, where they can pay them less and therefore make more profits. Now, this is going to be an argument that he is going to be fairly successful on, especially because both Bush and Clinton are in favor of NAFTA. He is going to leave the campaign for a number of months. I believe it was from August through October, because he believes there is a Republican plot to destroy him. There's some very negative campaign ads coming out against him. This is going to hurt him. He's also going to nominate a military general, I believe it was a general or an admiral, as his vice president, who is just seen as totally unprepared and incredibly weak. Now, the vice president, while not being a major player, is important and does influence the election because they're a heartbeat away from the presidency. If anything happens to the president, they're the ones in charge. And people were not comfortable with Ross Perot as a vice presidential candidate should Perot be elected and something happened to him. They were not comfortable with his VP being the president. Now, there is going to be the debate on whether or not Perot was a spoiler in this election, okay? He was more of a conservative than a liberal. Therefore, people argued that he took votes away from Bush that would have otherwise gone for Bush. He did receive 19% of the popular vote, which was the highest any president or any third party has come in a very, very long time in American history. Now, whether or not he actually played spoiler is really up to debate. A lot of political scientists, when they look at this election later on, have determined that roughly half of his votes would have gone to Clinton and the other half would have gone to the Republican candidate of George H.W. Bush. So in reality, it was most likely that he was split this and he did not play the role of a spoiler. However, there is no real way of determining this beyond a reasonable doubt. Clinton is going to win this election, as you know, right here with his electoral map, okay? We're going to get, as you can see, the upper Midwest is going to go Democratic, the Northeast is going to Democratic, and the West Coast is going to go Democratic. Clinton is going to win with 370 electoral votes to 168 electoral votes by George H.W. Bush. Now, note Ross Perot did not gain a single electoral vote. However, he was very close in a number of states. The way the United States breaks it down is a winner take all. So if you win by one vote in a certain state, like Montana, for example, even if you had a large percentage of Republican votes, you're going to win that election. We're going to see this in the election of 2000 with Bush v. Gore. But this is going to be the election right here. Clinton is elected the 42nd President of the United States. Questions, comments, put it below. Otherwise, good luck.